Hey there, ass kickers. Welcome to the YouTube version of Your Kick-Ass Life podcast. I am so grateful that you are here and that you have landed on this episode, whether it was randomly or on purpose. Regardless, you are here for a reason, and I am excited to bring you this episode. If you are new to me and my podcast, my name is Andrea Owen, and I run the joint over here at Your Kick-Ass Life. I help super smart, high-achieving women who struggle in the areas of control and perfectionism and numbing out. I help them with the coping skills and life tools to create more courage and confidence in their lives. I also have a weekly podcast where I do some solo episodes as well as interview amazing guests like the one that you're going to hear today. This is actually Lori Harder's second time on the podcast. If you want to hear the very first episode where she was on, you can find that link in the description here on YouTube. And Lori Harder is one of my very favorite people. In this particular episode, we are talking about negativity. We are talking about failure. We're talking about achievement and fear, some really juicy topics. And also, if you are listening to this episode before January 22nd, 2018, I am hosting a free book study for anyone that purchases my second book, which is called How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, 14 Habits That Are Holding You Back from Happiness. You can find out all about that at yourkickasslife.com/HTSFLS. Again, that link is in the description of this particular video. I would love to see you over there. And if you liked this episode, you would love the over 100. I'm almost at 200 episodes actually now over on the podcast. You can find all the episodes on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you get podcasts from your smartphone. And hopefully I will see you over there. So without further ado, here is Lori. Lori, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Me too. I know we were like talking a mile a minute before we started recording, and I'm like, we should probably start recording this fantastic conversation that I know is about to come up. And, you know, you're one of my favorite people who is all about wellness and mixing and matching wellness and personal development. And I'm going to kind of just like start wherever and just like throw one at you. And I think that pretty sure that I've heard you talk about this before in your podcast or written about it or somewhere. And that is negative people. So how do you feel negative people play a role into recovery, and how do you deal with them when they creep into your circle?
I love them. No.
Love them more.
I mean, truly, it is a weird love-hate thing now. I mean, in the beginning, I think definitely I was all hate. But now I actually really appreciate them because they get me really solid in how I actually feel. Because I feel like sometimes you can put something out there and it's so nice to get all of the lovey stuff back and for everybody to tell you how amazing you are and how much you impacted their life. But honestly, sometimes it's those negative people that, number one, now I've learned to question, okay, do I need to look at this? Is this true or not? Is this actually something that I should pay more attention to? And, you know, there have been times when I have actually gone back and been like, oh my gosh, this troll was totally right.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask you. So are you talking about like criticism and like negative feedback, that kind of stuff?
Yes. Yeah. Negative feedback, maybe that comes with, you know, I guess we've got a whole slew of negative things to talk about, which is fantastic. But as far as negative people, when it's possibly about your stuff that you are putting out into the world or creating or just how you're showing up, right? Because people, if you're a public figure at all, or you're even, you know, you have a blog or you're putting anything out, it really puts you immediately into the line of fire for those people who are not so happy. So for me, number one, it's looking at, is this true or not? And number two, will I do it anyway, despite if this keeps on happening and these people keep saying these things? And, you know, sometimes you have to take a break for a minute just to gather your bearings and cry and like punch a pillow. Yeah. But then it's always a resounding yes when you're on that soul path. So they really help me get really rooted in, you know, is this something that I want to do, even if this pain is coming for me?
That is one of the most uncomfortable, like, let's just be honest, personal development is uncomfortable. But that moment of when somebody lobs something at you, whether it's like a negative comment on your blog or a negative review on Amazon, or I don't see how that would ever happen, but it just, or even when we're having a disagreement with somebody we really care about and they say something about us. And usually our immediate response is to get defensive and tell them, no, they're wrong. But that moment when you realize there's some truth in it and you're like, ugh.
I had it happen recently that I like put out a challenge and I pick a winner like from all of these people who are doing this free 14-day challenge. And someone had mentioned like they got really upset because I chose a winner based off of how inspiring they were and how they were, you know, really rallying the troops and getting everyone excited about this challenge, you know, along with following the rules. But the rules stated that it would be at random. Well, to me, at random means picking whoever the hell I want. But to this person, at random means truly like a lottery. And so, I mean, I know it's something so small, but it kind of was this bigger deal for a little bit, not on my end, but to some other people because she started posting all over Instagram about it. And so I was like, you know what? This is something that it may not have meant anything to me, but if I just cleaned up the languaging and the writing, I could actually take care of this for this person and maybe future people who feel this way, right? Like rule followers. So because that's not necessarily something that is, you know, hugely in my personality, like details, but that it made me really not just in that area. So maybe that was something, you know, smaller, but it made me look at all areas of my life and really where I'm not paying attention to the details and just throwing stuff out, you know, get it out there. And it made me slow down a bit.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that is tricky. And just for anybody listening, it's really, I think that even just that pause of looking at, is there anything that you need to actually shine the light on and that you need any mess that you need to clean up? That's what I always say. Not always.
You just said something so huge for me, Andrea. It's pausing because I mean, I turn into like legit for like 5 minutes. I feel like I'm turning green and expanding and like freaking out. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Like, I can't even, like, I don't even read what they're writing. Like, I contort it and make it say what I think evilness is coming out of it. And then I reread it, you know, 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, they didn't actually say that. Okay.
Yeah.
So space is so vital. Go walk around, go like have somebody that you can like scream and say all of the feelings that you're feeling in that moment about what's going on, and then come back to it. Like, I highly recommend at least a few hours and maybe a walk.
I'm so glad you said that. I want to underline what Lori just said, everybody. And that is about allowing yourself the space and time and energy to feel the feelings that come. I actually wrote about this in my book. So when it's that whole thing about like not taking things personally, you know, that advice that goes around, and I know Don Miguel Ruiz is amazing and he wrote about it, but I think that when you just hear that advice of don't take things personally without any context, it's this impossible goal that just you can't, we are humans. That's not how our brains work in terms of survival. So I wrote about this because when I first started blogging and, you know, my blog started to gain traction, and then I was starting to get people who were like, I don't like this and I don't like you, you know, like,
thanks.
And I was like, oh my God, you know, I, of course, you know, focus on the 2 bad comments that I got out of hundreds and hundreds. And I would ask people like, how do you do that? How do you keep writing and putting your art out into the world and keep on keeping on when you get, you know, basically haters? And they're like, well, you just have to learn to not take it personally. And I was like, who does this? Like, I felt like something was wrong with me. And so finally I talked to more and more people about it. And it was basically, they were like, no, you do. It does sting. It does. And you just feel the feelings and then, like summon your community and then work from there. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that it's not about just, oh, fuck them, those assholes. And like, no, it's not how it works.
Oh my God. So true. There's so, you know, I just call on massive compassion. Like, no, it's now the first word that pops in my head is you have no idea what they've gone through and what you've triggered and what you're mirroring back to them. Because I mean, we just did not we didn't walk in their shoes. So for me, it's like, I make up scenarios in my mind of like, well, maybe they went through this or maybe they went through this. And I'd be like, oh, well, I'd be that way too. Exactly. And it really helps me to understand them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of trying hard, you talk a lot about perfectionism, and it's like one of my favorite topics, and embracing failure as a way of growth. Why do you think people struggle so much to show ourselves the same love that we so easily show others, especially when it's about failing or falling down after trying something vulnerable?
I mean, ultimately, I'm just going to really share, how I feel is it's rejection. I mean, we could be tied to that doesn't feel good. It goes right along with everything we're talking about with negativity. It's like, it is so gut wrenching to not be liked, not be loved, be rejected. We feel like if we put our work out there or anything that we are creating or doing, that number one, we compare it to the people who've been doing it for years or who may have more talent than you. And the thing is that I'm always trying to remember is, if I didn't get to put my stuff out there, or if everybody did not get to create or enjoy that creative ability to be able to share with other people too, what would your life be like? Like, you're going to feel some form of pain no matter what. You're either going to feel the pain of massive suppression, which we know can take so many different forms in your life, or you're going to feel the pain of potentially putting it out and not having people like you. And I will tell you that the one of not having people like you, it's so few and far between compared to that feeling of, I've been in that place where I've been totally suppressed, felt like I couldn't, like I didn't have a voice, like I couldn't speak, like I would be completely rejected from my entire tribe. And I'll tell you that suppression is far worse than actually just getting it out and maybe being criticized by the few people who are going to criticize you.
The one person that didn't like your Instagram reels.
Right. Totally.
Yeah, I feel like we need a new word for failure because we have made that word so bad.
I know.
Just gets such a bad rap. And I know that this isn't the first time anybody's hearing this, but we can't do anything without having failures. Like, there's not one single successful person, even semi-successful person who hasn't failed so many times and either, gotten the emotional shit kicked out of them because they put themselves out there in a relationship and it didn't work out, or they have had a business endeavor that has gone badly, or an investment that has not gone their way, or a job that they thought was going to work out and ended up totally falling. Like, just so many, like every single person listening has a story, probably more than one, of some kind of failure. And I'm always a fan of saying, like, it is really how you look at it. And I get this question in interviews. Do you get this question where people say, what's your biggest failure? And I'm like, it's so hard for me to answer that because to me, like, I look at failure as like something that I don't even know how to describe it anymore because I don't look at it as that way.
Me either.
I look at it as it's just part of growth. It's part of the learning process. It's part of being your best self. It just is. It's part of the job description.
Totally. Even when you just said that, like, I had a whole visceral experience of, well, honestly, I don't feel like I've failed. I feel like I've tried and I've learned, but failure, I have such an amazing relationship with failure. I actually get excited about it because it's like where you jump in and all the pieces like fall on the ground and you get to see what worked and what didn't work. And you pick up what worked and you do it again. And I think it's so crazy because it's like failure and learning in private is like just learning, but learning in public is basically called like failure, It's kind of like practicing in public and not having it be perfect. People say that's failure. And I'm like, you're really just learning your lessons in public is what failure is for so many people. And to me, it's like, that's even better to fail, quote unquote, fail in public, because I feel like there's more to be learned. You get feedback from it and you get to teach at the same exact time. Yeah. So honestly, I'm so willing to take those leaps now because number one, I feel like now I kind of approach things with, please don't put me on a pedestal or think that I'm good at things naturally or whatever that looks like. Because when I start to think that people think that about me, I put my own self in a box. And I'm like, oh my God, maybe there is pressure around this. And I immediately jump out of that box because I'm like, no, people don't have an expectation on me. I don't want you to have an expectation. So that's a really big message that I like to offer so that I can also be learning it at the same time for myself. Like the boxes that we put, other people in are the same boxes that we're putting ourselves in.
Yes. Yes to everything. And not to say that failing publicly isn't horrifying. Like,
right.
Again, kind of the worst.
Totally. But I swear to you, though, you can create a good relationship with it. I mean, it's not fun, but man, at the same time, if you don't have those moments, you have no contrast of what is fun and what is great and what is love and what is light. Like, they're equal in your life. It's just how much resistance are you wrapping in the failure and in the darkness that you're spending most of your time feeling resistant to it, even when you are, even when you're not in it.
Yeah. I've also found that the times that I've had, let's just put like air quotes around the word, like failures, that those have been the moments that, not every single time, but the times that I have kind of catapulted my own personal development or even my own success in business or relationships or personal life has been those moments where something has gone wrong. Or I've, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, like I've had to look at something that someone did not like about me. And those have been painful moments, both, the looking at the hard parts of me and the failures. And then, like you were saying, like getting excited about it and sort of like, that's where you can see exactly like, okay, where do I need to put these puzzle pieces back together a different way in order to move on into the next chapter of my life.
I love that. And you know what? You really just made me realize too, with those people, sometimes it's funny what we end up taking personally from the negative people, because I might have just shared that story with you and you're like, meh, whatever. But I knew deep down, like I had an issue with details. So it triggered me beyond what normally would have triggered you. So where you're getting triggered is something that you might have a knowing around, but you haven't been wanting to look at. Yeah.
Well, in those instances, and this is very specific for your instance, and in a way, I'm kind of giving unsolicited advice here, but those are because I'm like you. I am terrible with details all the time. And I have somebody on my team who is great with details, who would not let that slide.
Yes, seriously. I know. I literally at our meetings, I'm like, hey guys, please notice around details. Just catch me where.
Yes. Read everything.
Because I just want to throw stuff out.
Yeah. And it's not just like checking for typos. It's like in the Facebook group guidelines, can you look and see if I missed anything? And there's always something that I've missed where it's my Emily and she points it out and she's like, here's where it could be better. And I'm like, thank you. Because I don't. Nope. We all need an Emily in our life. Like we all need somebody following us around, proofreading our life.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I'm getting those people all around me at this point.
Yeah. Like orange cones. Yeah. Well, I want to kind of switch gears and my book is 14 habits that are holding us back from happiness. And obviously there are 14 of them that kind of we do these behaviors in order for us to try to avoid criticism and judgment and things like that and keep us quote unquote safe. And one of those habits that I don't talk a whole lot about on the podcast, but my guess is that you might have struggled with this in your life. And I know a lot of your audience struggles with this, and that's overachieving. And so it's overachieving as a way to, people that struggle with overachieving are people that validate themselves through their accomplishments. And so I'm just interested in your take on that. Like, has that been a problem in your own life, or do you see your audience struggling with that?
I see my audience struggling with it all the time, but I see myself struggling with it more often than they maybe, and I didn't even realize that I was an overachiever. That's the craziest part until probably the last 2 years. I just was like, oh, I'm finally finishing stuff. Like I'm finally doing stuff, because I have to tell you, the way that I was raised in a really restrictive religion where I couldn't actually do things with people if it didn't involve people who were in my particular congregation. So that really took away that really ruled out a lot of things, sports, dancing, academics were not stressed. In fact, they were a bit frowned upon just because you should be investing all of, your time and energy into preaching and sharing the religion. So when I moved out, I had my crazy period of just trying to find myself through pretty much anything and everything. But then when I found this thing that provided love and attention that I never had before. It was like crack. And I really,
so was that accomplishments, you mean?
It was achieving.
Okay.
Yeah. It was accomplishments. It was achieving. And the first route that I took was through fitness competitions, was through, oh my goodness, the more fit that I get, the more love and attention that I get.
You literally get trophies when you win. Like,
oh yeah.
It's like the ultimate.
Totally. I know. So then when I wasn't in that type of shape, it was like, I felt like I wasn't lovable. I wouldn't be achieving anything. People wouldn't desire to work with me. Why on earth am I, valuable to anyone? I mean, this is years of this back and forth, really learning to release my identity around fitness and my body. And the thing is that the place where we struggle the most and have the most darkness and pain, which was really, I silently struggled, because all people would see was, this was when social media wasn't like live yet. It wasn't doing anything where you were like, this is me in the moment. It's like, oh, here's me 3 months ago. But I'm, my fingertips are orange with Dorito cheese as I post this picture of myself in a bikini, and I'm not feeling so hot. But, the thing that I learned from it was how important self-development is, and how that whole piece of you are not your body, you're not your job, you're not that thing, you're never going to be full from that achievement ever. It just sent me on this massive journey of what does it look like to actually be full and not have to, have a thing or be attached to an identity, because I was in such a personal prison over it. And, after the body went the achievements, after, and there was just so many things that I had to unravel there, because I just kept jumping from achievement to achievement, because it was identity and it was love and it was attention. And once I had it, it's like, it was almost worse to go back without it. So it just sent me on a really long journey of lots of self-development that I'm still working on.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. I didn't know that story of yours. And I'm sure so many people can relate to that, whether their journey isn't, maybe it might be school. I know for me, for a while, it was school. And I had every plan in the world to go get my master's degree. And then I realized that the reason I was doing it was simply because of the achievement value. And it was also like me being able to push the snooze button on my life, because I would have rather done that, because I knew I was good at school. I was smart and I could get good grades and I could feel good about, getting papers back and having them have A's on them, rather than look at the hard stuff in my life. Like, I'd much rather do that than feel my feelings. I'd much rather take an exam in organic chemistry than feel my feelings in the therapy session. Like, I was at that point. So that was a huge revelation. I was studying for the GRE and I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. And that was hard. So I think that, whether it's fitness for someone listening, or if it's their job, climbing the corporate ladder, I have a lot of listeners, that is how they validate themselves. And here's the tricky part. I don't know if this is tricky for you, but because I think overachievers, we tend to, and I say we, because it's still something I really have to keep in check. We see it as either, okay, we're either doing all these things and checking off all the boxes so that we can feel love and get validated and attention and recognition, or we just throw in the towel and like throw papers up in the air and say like, fuck it, I'm just gonna, move into my parents' basement. And P.S., you guys, like, I have lived in my parents' basement before, so literally did when we lived in Utah.
Amazing.
For several months. So I don't say that to be judgy, but like move into your parents' basement and like quit your job. And so like finding that middle ground, like how do you find that middle ground?
Achieving is just another form of numbing. So I really look at, because it's easy, right? If you know how to achieve, or maybe you're good in a particular area, like, you brought me to a place where I had this crossroads where it was like, I could go and continue on in the fitness world, and I could continue possibly, trying to win extra titles or do some sort of streak of some sort of, winning championships. But I was like, do I really want to do that? that? Will that actually make me feel better? What am I going to feel like at the end of that? And I realized, I was really using it to not look at this bigger picture of what I really wanted. But what I really wanted was begging for space, and it was begging for me to slow down. When you're good at something, it's easy to just get back in the grind and do it again. Do another competition, do another challenge, put out another e-course, go do another speaking event, write another book, coach more clients, open up another business, whatever that looks like. But a lot of times that higher self, if you're feeling very frustrated or you're feeling really worn out, it's probably begging for some space to get you to the next place. But that's just our form of numbing, it's that or food or alcohol or sex or drugs or whatever that looks like. So I guess I slow down. Like, I allow my life to slow down a bit. I do less travel. I spend more time in nature and outside of the gym for me, things like that.
That's interesting. I think yes to all of that. And I love that you were able to listen to your intuition and answer the question of like, what is it that I really want? Like, what am I really hungry for? For me, and I think maybe a lot of people listening, and I know this because a lot of my clients, that this has been the thing, that they've been overachieving, and the thing that's missing from their life is human connection. So I'm not saying these people are hermits and that they, are like major introverts. Their personal relationships are in a struggle, and they might have like a great partnership. Like maybe they're in a relationship or they're married and that's going pretty well, but their female friendships are like pretty much non-existent. They have like surface friends or like coworkers that they hang out with, but it's like having that person where they are truly seen and heard, or they're grieving something that they have not yet processed because they're too busy being strong about it. And that's what I see a lot. So anyone listening, if you are struggling with overachieving, first of all, you need to read my book. Second of all, shameless plug. Second of all, like, think about what it is that you really want. I know Brene Brown has an excellent description of, because a lot of times what overachieving is, it's also enveloped in perfectionism. And perfectionism is outwardly focused, and so is overachieving. It's like, what will everyone think? Or what am I really getting out of this? And it's that, validation, recognition. And that middle ground that you and I were just talking about, that is inwardly focused. Like, because you can, be a fitness competitor and be doing it because it's something you're really hungry for. So it's figuring out what that is.
Totally. And for a while I did, and once I figured that out, I did. So I love that you said that. And, you just completely made me realize in that transition from fitness to like mindset and things like that, that's when I allowed space for totally a tribe of women to come in, and my life completely changed. So I love that you're pointing that out.
Yeah, it's important. It's so important. And it is that pesky vulnerability thing again, like letting people in, because you get to be a certain age and you have had someone betray you. You have had a friend ghost you. You have had someone stab you in the back, and like all these really hard things and these relationship failures, and it's just like, we know what that feels like. And so we put these walls up and then in comes overachieving and numbing and all those other things. So, speaking of hard things, let's talk about fear. And fear, I know, is something you talk about a lot. And tell me about the tools you recommend for breaking through fears and reaching goals.
Okay. First of all, I love talking about fear because it was my biggest struggle before. I'd say fear.
In a family of religion, I can't even imagine that there would be any fear in your life. Nothing against religion, you guys. Please don't email me.
No, exactly. And it looks different for everyone, but for me growing up, I had created my own idea of that religion that I grew up in, right? Because we have our own takes on everything. So for me, the fear started at a really young age, fear and anxiety of not being worthy of even, living, basically, of being good enough. So fear and anxiety were something that I just thought they were a part of who I was. I actually didn't think that it could get better. And I never thought that fears could potentially go away around certain things. I will tell you the biggest tool that I have learned around fear and anxiety, especially after watching my mom struggle with anxiety and have panic attacks, and myself having panic attacks and feeling like fear was so consuming. This was a daily thing for me, literally. Like I could hardly even get to a point. I was in my 20s and I remember going out socially with my husband and meeting some people, and I couldn't even go out without at least 2-drink minimum, you know? Wow. It's like I had to have alcohol to numb how panicked I was if the attention got focused on me due to like some different bullying and things from the past. But for me, fear has been something that when I decided to talk about it and have a group of people or a group of women and get it out of the dark, right? Like get it out of the shame closet of being alone and thinking that I'm alone in this struggle and that I'm a freaking weirdo, that when I started talking about it and getting it out, it's like it started to dissolve just a bit. Like that was the beginning of maybe just a bit of melting, right? And then I also wanted to make sure that I got into areas and surroundings and places where it would be safe for me to talk about it more and to learn the tools to work through it. Like I actually didn't want to just go to a seminar and hear about fear and how to get rid of it and the tools to do it. I wanted to do them in person. So I looked for people and mentors who would actually take what I was doing and work through different fears and anxieties in person. For me, I ended up finding Landmark Forum. I ended up finding Jack Canfield. I ended up finding different classes that people were doing, Tony Robbins events, things like that, where I could actually try on the different ideas of working through what was so debilitating to me that would actually physically stop me, right? It would either make me have a panic attack or make me think I was having a heart attack to the point where I would physically not be able to do anything and like I was going to pass out. So I wanted to find these spaces to be able to do that. So if your fear is to that point, and your anxiety is to that point, you want to be able to find these these crash pads, basically, where you're going to be held when you do decide to take those first steps. And that'll be the reference point for the rest of your life. And that's truly why I developed the events that I do, is because I didn't want to just have people speaking to people. I didn't want to just have women or men from the stage telling people what to do, because we can learn, all we want. We can know that it's common sense. But as my friend says, common sense is not common practice. I love Jim Quick says that all the time, because we can hear it, but doing it is totally different. So having those places or creating that group of people in your life where you guys all try on these scary things, whether that's role playing, whether that's sales, whether that's public speaking, whatever that is, you have to have that safe space that you can practice.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I have actually struggled with, I was diagnosed with severe anxiety disorder in 2003. And that's rough. I will say that's rough. I know a lot of my listeners struggle with that. And I definitely think A, find a good doctor, and B, find a really, really great therapist. I think that those are two things personally that have mattered so much to me, because it was like you were saying, I wasn't just going and reading about it, and I did that too, but I wanted someone to help me have actual tools to be able to use in my life and help me through them, and, a little bit hold me accountable. That's what my therapist did. And that was how I do it too. But having anxiety disorder is like fear. It's like it's in front of your face. Like you have a ski mask on that it's all fear and you can't escape it. Like you can't get it off. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. I used to close my eyes and just imagine that I had a zipper from started at the top of my head and came down, and I could just zip out of my body, and it wasn't a body image thing. It was just like, well, I had that too, but that was different. It was more like I felt so uncomfortable in my own skin. I wanted to just get out and get me out. And that's all. That's the only way I could explain it to people. But it takes knowing, just trying your hardest to be present. And I got to the point where I got really good at seeing a panic attack come on. Like almost like when a train is coming and you can like feel the vibration of the tracks. That's how I got with my anxiety, and I could feel them coming. And still to this day, it's been a long time since I've had to be, personally, I was on medication for a few years and haven't been for a long time. But sometimes I just wake up with it, and for no reason, I can't pinpoint it. So I used to get really mad, and now I'm just like, oh, well, it's just a friend that has, an old friend that has come over, and she's, just going to stay for the day and be gone tomorrow. That's how I've learned to deal with it too.
Same for all of that. I actually went to a doctor to ask for a therapist, and he's like, no, just take these drugs. So I went on medication too for a couple years, and no, it was actually like a year, and ended up pulling myself off because, I just noticed that it was A, not helping, and B, it was causing all of these insane side effects that were showing up in my relationship. That I was like, oh, okay. I mean, honestly, what happened is it was like a year in, and I know this isn't, this story is going to be, or this scenario is different for everyone. Some people really do need to be on medication, but for me, I just wasn't facing it, right? I didn't have a place to work through it. So I was really looking for Band-Aids at that point as well. So I was like, sure, this sounds great. Let's fix it. I'll totally take these. This is awesome. I'm going to be healed. And one day it was like, I was watching this commercial, and I had been feeling so numb, and this woman was, crying in the commercial, and it was this really heartfelt message, and I could tell that it was heartfelt, but I just felt nothing. Like I just couldn't even feel anymore. And I remember thinking, and this is the craziest thing. I've never actually shared it with, on a podcast, but I remember thinking, if my entire family died in a car accident right now, would I feel anything? And I just couldn't access those emotions. And I was like, whoa, red flag. Wow. Okay. Maybe I need to start looking at this. And I literally went off the next day, which I don't recommend. Please don't do that.
I've done that too.
I thought I was going to die.
Yes, see your doctor.
Yeah, do not ever do that. But it really was like this awakening moment of, what am I doing? Wow, I guess I have to actually look at this now. And it was a really scary, sobering moment for me to realize that I had to start working through it. And there wasn't a Band-Aid. I depleted all of my options at that point.
So when you say work through it, I know you talked about it a minute ago, but was that more specifically like looking at the emotional wounds and healing that you needed to do?
Yeah. You know what? It's been so many years that it's been just about everything I can possibly tell you, Andrea. It's been like accessing. I still work with it. I still get it. Like public speaking really brings it out in me beforehand, which is so weird because I'm obsessed with it, but it also equally is like a terrifying experience for me. So don't you love that the things that you want to do are hidden behind like the scariest?
Oh, I have one too. Mine's poetry slam. I am terrified to do it. And it's like the most exciting thing. I have plans to do it when I go to New York City in January. So stay tuned, everybody. Terrified, but so excited.
Okay, I'm dying because that just became a goal of mine. So we must talk about that after or
now.
Or
I have to go to LA. Okay, go on.
Like for real. So, okay, I really see I'm getting sidetracked because I want to talk about that now. So weird you brought that up. Of course you just said that. But anyway, yeah, just really tapping into or looking at where did this even come from? Like, have I always been this way? Is this really a belief that I cannot work through this? Where did this initially begin? What was this from? Is this because I'm trying to protect myself from something? There's been so much writing. There's been so much therapy, coaching, mentoring. It's been a lot of, for me, the biggest things, I have to be honest, are really being able to try it on and do the scary thing in person, but have somebody loving and compassionate to be there to be like, you're safe.
Yeah.
You're good. You can keep going. Everyone is cheering you on. This is what you want to be picturing. Just, you need to not only have the people to maybe create that voice for you in the beginning, if you can't create your own, but then coach you on how to bring in, for me, it was really coaching that inner voice to, bring in the compassion for that child who maybe didn't have that. So now I've learned to become my own really compassionate, loving coach whenever that happens.
I love everything about that. And so what I'm going to do, everybody listening, because in like 30 seconds, Lori just went through probably like 15 years of therapy, everything she mentioned. So I get this question a lot. Where do I even start? I just recorded a podcast episode a couple months ago about it. I'm going to pop that link in the show notes because I go through what you were talking about. Start with addictions, therapy, core beliefs, etc. So if you're feeling overwhelmed but are excited about this conversation, go listen to that episode. But same with me. And for me, it was, I went on medication in 2003. I had not even started my own personal development journey. And to be honest with you, medication changed my life at that time. I I could not cope with my life. And it allowed me the headspace to be, and it worked so well for me. But again, side effects that were lame.
Right.
But it did allow me that presence to go, oh, this is how a normal brain is supposed to react to something like this. Like, it allowed me just to be able to see kind of how, I don't know. So, but I'll tell you a quick story.
I love hearing that too.
Yeah. And it helped, but, and then I just didn't need to be on it anymore. But here's another really interesting story about health and emotional health. So I have had chronic high blood pressure since I was 16 or 17 years old. So it runs in my family, and it was always high, but I was never medicated until I was in my mid 20s. I think I went to a random doctor, like an ER doctor, for something totally unrelated. And my blood pressure was sky high, and he said something, and I'm like, it's always like that. And he's like, and you're not on medication? And I'm like, well, no, I've never been put on medication for it. And he said, this is so bad. Like, if you're not medicated for this, you're going to have a heart attack by the time you're 40. Oh. So I was put on high blood pressure medication, was on high blood pressure medication for years and years and years, even like through my pregnancies, was put on, pregnancy safe high blood pressure medication. And then we moved to North Carolina a few years ago, and I had to switch doctors, and I ran out of medication. And I just kind of like dragged my feet about going to the doctor. And it had been like, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months by the time, and I hadn't been taking my blood pressure medication. I go and find a doctor, and I tell her I have chronic hypertension, told her my health history. She took my blood pressure, and she said, your blood pressure is fine. And I was like, that can't be right. I've been unmedicated for 4 months. Take it again. She took it again. And I have a cuff at home. So I started taking it at home. It was gone. So here's the crazy thing. I think my theory is that when I got sober in 2011, because that's really when all my emotions kind of like blew up in my face and I started to deal with it on a really intense level, I think that's when my blood pressure corrected itself.
Wow.
And there's no other, I didn't change my diet. I really doubt just geographically moving to the state of North Carolina, like changed my blood pressure. Who knows? Maybe Dixie just did it for me. But I mean, emotionally, I am so much healthier when we moved in 2015, was it 2014, 2015, than I was before. So anyway, I'm a true believer that that's what happened, that there's a huge connection.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, I feel like I've had so many points in my life where I thought this is what it was. This was genetics. This is what I was doing, but or this is what I would be dealing with my entire life. But I look back and I'm like, wow, my habits were really sealing the deal on that one, or my thoughts were really sealing the deal, or the people I was hanging around were really sealing the deal on that one. And it's like, sometimes we can completely get out of something and just watch how you actually change. It's the craziest thing without even realizing it, but changing, these environmental things that might be what you're looking at all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for this conversation. Everyone listening, if you don't already listen to Earn Your Happy podcast with Lori Harder, you need to go and subscribe on iTunes to get more of her goodness and wisdom. And thank you so much for being here. You need to come back. We need to just have a podcast so selfishly I can talk to you every week.
That was exactly, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. The conversation doesn't end. We get to record it.
I know. Thank you so much for being here. And LoriHarder.com. Go again, subscribe to her podcast and consume all things Lori Harder. Thank you everyone so much for being here. And please, please, please go pre-order my book and get all of the bonuses that I told you about at the very beginning of this episode. I'm excited to have you in my free 4-week class. Lori, anything you want to say to the audience before we say our goodbyes?
Just the one thing that really resonated with me was connecting with other like-minded people and how life-giving that is, especially just after this podcast. No matter how busy I am, no matter what I'm doing, when I get to connect with like-minded people, it just recharges my entire life and brings a new perspective. Yes. So if you're feeling lonely or anxious or anything, go connect with someone.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, again, for being here for another episode. And until next time, I will see you out in cyberspace. Bye-bye. Hey, Ass Kickers, you know it would help me out so much if you left a rating and review for this podcast. Your Kick-Ass Life podcast will always be free to you, and to help me get more awesome guests and to spread the word, it helps tremendously if you leave a rating and a review. Now, they don't particularly make this super easy to do, so I'll help you out a little. If you're in iTunes and you're on your phone, when you are in the podcast app, you need to search for Your Kick-Ass Life podcast. I know, even if you're subscribed, this is how you do it. So when you search for it and you see it come up, click on the cover art, then towards the top where it says reviews, click that, scroll down a tiny little bit, and then click write a review. Stitcher is a bit easier if you're on Android. The easiest way I found to do this is to type into Google, Stitcher.com, Your Kick-Ass Life, and voila, my podcast should pop up as the first link. Scroll down and click write a review. That's it. Thank you so very much. You have no idea how much it helps me when you do that. All right. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.